Hi mga kasokal, it's Friday and it's time for another virtual class. And tonight we have Anna Nicole Dumaguindin, and she's a Riverside County worker. She works for the Asian Pacific Counseling and Treatment Centers as a Filipino community mental health educator and promoter. And in honor of National Mental Health Month, we are presenting to you Ikaw ay Sapat, Managing COVID-19 and Other Stressors. So everyone, help me welcome Anna Nicole Dumaguindin. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thank you, SoCal Pinoys, for having me tonight. Yes, it's what better way to also look at Filipino American History Month than to talk about ways that our mental health can be resilient during these challenging times, especially since our community is very much amidst the front lines, making whether it's here or back home in the Philippines, right? We are put through very challenging circumstances, and yet the resilience of the Pinoy, right? The Pinoy spirit is still there, and that's why I wanted to call this presentation "Ikaw ay sapat," you are enough, because in my life, it's been a term and it's been a phrase that's been said to me that's very comforting, very soothing, very lovingly, and it carries a lot of very positive memories. And it's also something that I say to my son and my family too. It's really great what's called self-talk, and we'll learn more about how these positive phrases can help us through stressful, challenging times during COVID, and can give us the strength to get the help that we need when that situation arises. A little bit about myself. So I'm actually streaming in from Riverside. So shout out to all the Inland Empire Pinoys out there. I see you all. We are a growing community, and I'm really excited to see it grow even further. So without further ado, I'm going to start my presentation. Okay, so again, ikaw ay sapat, you are enough. How can we manage COVID-19 anxiety and other stressors? I also have a master's in science and global medicine, alumni from USC. That's where I finished my graduate studies. And again, community mental health promoter, which includes not just education, outreach, linkage to resources, but also a bit of community organizing too, where it's relevant, any way that we can overcome the stigma of mental health in our Filipino community. Right, and this is through Asian Pacific Counseling Treatment Centers, and we do work a lot with the PhilAm Mental Health Resource Center in Moreno Valley. So usually we do these presentations, whether virtually or in person, but it stays the same. Our community guidelines is you show respect to everyone with your speech, actions, and attitude. If there's anything else, feel free to type that in the YouTube chat or wherever you are streaming into, right? These are our workshop objectives. What is stress, mental health? What is the mental health spectrum? Different risk factors, protective factors. How can we manage this COVID-related stress anxiety? How can we reduce stigma? And where can we go for help and resources? And also another note, since we're also approaching the time of Undas, or All Souls Day, All Saints Day, I themed a lot of this PowerPoint and the imagery around what the celebration looks like in the Philippines. Also because it's a reminder that our ancestors would definitely acknowledge that our resilient spirit is something to remember as we are remembering them as well. So anyway, a lot of this might be new, might be old information to you all, but what is stress? It's basically how our brain and body responds to demands and challenges in life, right? No matter who we are, it's a normal thing. It's a normal response. It can occur one time, or it can occur in a long time, like over a long time occurrence. But what's important is that our bodies return to normal functioning. And it's also important to note that different people cope with stress more effectively, recover more quickly than others. But at the end of the day, we have to respect everybody in the ways that they seek healthy ways to recover, and we support them unconditionally, right? And stress is not just something that affects our minds, right, and our emotional mental well-being, but it has an effect, especially when it is chronic and long-term, on our bodies, especially when our bodies are not able to return to normal functioning. Right. So during an infectious disease outbreak, this stress can manifest as either the fear and worry about our own health or the health of our loved ones, difficulty sleeping or concentrating, the worsening of already existing conditions, right? And it can also make people more vulnerable to an increased use of alcohol, tobacco, and other substances. And so as we're talking about stress and how it affects our mental health, I think it's important for us to look back and examine what is the Filipino mental health situation. This is just a start of the conversation, but as you can see, right, we are considered part of the Asian Pacific Islander population, which overall 13% have a diagnosable mental illness, and yet we are 3 times less likely to seek mental health services, right? When we talk about our Filipino youth, compared to other Asian subgroups, we have higher rates of behavioral health problems. Not only that, but our adolescent females have higher rates of suicidal ideation. So mental health is definitely something very much relevant and important to our community. And then this is just a chart of overall, looking beyond phrases and statistics. This is a chart. So as you can see here, it's divided by age group. In the age group from 15 years old to 34, the second leading cause of death is suicide, second to unintentional injury. Unintentional injuries can include things like a car crash, right? And so why is this happening, especially among the youth? Well, when we examine overall stressors, this includes family obligations, cultural intergenerational conflict, perfectionism, pressure to excel, all of which, unfortunately, right now at this in our current situation, weigh a lot heavier than the resources we have for our youth, such as coping skills and support networks, and even access to services as well. So it's not just an issue that concerns our youth, but it's an issue that also concerns our Filipino parents, uncles, aunties, and elders, right? Our parents are exposed to multiple adversities in this society, and also have been documented to have higher rates of major postpartum depression, right? And yes, right. Overall, children and adults have low rates of mental health care utilization, including parenting programs too, a lot of which is due, unfortunately, to the stigma associated with mental health problems, right? So that means not only do we access it at lower rates, but we access it as a last resort. And looking into what exactly is the COVID-19 mental health situation, right? As of May, over a third of Americans have experienced high levels of psychological distress at some point during periods of social distancing. 64% of homes with healthcare workers also have an increased vulnerability to adverse effects to their mental well-being. When we look at the disaster distress hotline, suicide hotlines, the text messages are going up. And calls to domestic violence hotlines, child abuse reports have decreased. But on the other hand, the visits to the ER with signs of severe physical abuse have increased. So as the pandemic takes a toll on our physical health, right, it's also taking a toll on our emotional and psychosocial well-being, which is something that is very important to us and something that we must address. However, there is a silver lining in some sort of way, right? The pandemic has been a time where people are reevaluating their priorities, reminding them of what their truest values are. These are quotes that come from different therapists, and I have the link to the full article in the resources. But in essence, it's a time for us to reflect on resiliency skills and how to be prepared and prepare our loved ones for living in times of certainty, not just now, but also in the future. And that this resiliency can be something carried on to future generations, something that those who came before us may have experienced in different circumstances. Right. So again, what is mental health? It's not just the absence of a mental illness, but it's our ability to enjoy life and achieve our full potential. A diagnosable mental illness, on the other hand, is something that affects a person's thinking, emotional state, behavior, etc. And then just to demystify what exactly are factors that contribute to mental health problems, this can include biological factors such as genetics or brain chemistry, life experiences like trauma, family history, unresolved problems, and long-term stress, right? Catching the problem at its later stages, and of course, alcohol and substance use. And whenever we teach about mental health and mental wellness, we talk about the mental health spectrum and the various interventions that no matter where you are on this wellness spectrum, you should be able to have access to and know how to access it. So for example, we are here in the stage of learning about prevention, right? Prevention, early intervention. This is something useful for when we feel well and want to maintain wellness. And then, of course, when we're becoming unwell, that may mean we have to seek brief counseling. And then if we're in this stage where we're feeling very, very unwell, we're not feeling great at all, that is the time when it is okay to seek treatment, services, and medication. Right. And so this is a little bit of homework. If we had a bit more time, I would facilitate this short activity on drawing what is it like when you are well, unwell, and recovering. And the point is that as you make these drawings, right, you reflect on what are the physical symptoms, what are the emotional symptoms, and what are the behavioral symptoms. So for example, physical can include unexplained aches and pains, headaches, stomach ulcers. Emotional can be, like in the picture, uncontrolled crying, very hot tempers. Behavioral can be things from aggression to feeling very lethargic and fatigued all the time, right? All of which are signs that we know our mental health is being compromised. And then in particular to children, these are things observable in their performance in school, nightmares or temper tantrums. And just as a note, we get this question a lot. How do you know if it's just my teen being a teen or it's a potential warning sign? So these are just 3 examples. And what's important to note is that no matter what age and what background you come from, everyone reacts to stressful situations differently, especially during the COVID pandemic, because there are certain parts of their life that are at stake. Right. So children and teens, their social life has drastically changed. For those with pre-existing conditions, things are very vulnerable and can be very scary, right? And those who are on the front lines too, it can be a very traumatic time. And when we talk about what exactly is causing COVID-19 anxiety, there are these 3 ingredients, right? One is unpredictability, when we don't have a clear sense of what may happen next. Second is a lack of control, when we don't have direct control for managing our issues appropriately. And third is threats to people or things we love or value. So unpredictability can be things like we don't know if the virus is mutating or how rapidly it's mutating, or different changes in the policies. However, and changes in the policies around safety, the guidelines, right? And a lack of control. We may feel like we want to be on top of everything, but it's spiraling beyond our control, right? And so these are different ways to manage COVID-19 stress and anxiety. This is just a start. You can elaborate on this. You can do a lot of, Googling and things like that. But number one is to be knowledgeable and prepared to get your knowledge from credible resources, right? Second is to be observant, right? To be observant of yourself and to know and recognize when you are starting to feel unwell. Also observing those in your household, when are they starting to feel that stress? Because maybe they also need help recognizing the signs too. Third is to focus on controlling what you can control. This is something that can bring you a sense of ease, right? And then, of course, to limit your exposure to news and social media. So it's okay to be updated, but to spend a lot of time and to the point where it's causing more stress than being informative, that's definitely a signal to limit exposure to news and social media. Keeping up with regular routines is also really important in that this is something that we can best control, right? This is something that gives us regularity, things to look forward to, and it ensures that we know what's going to happen next, right? In the small scale of things, right? And of course, taking plenty of breaks, getting plenty of sleep, exercise, eating well, having the discipline to make sure that we do this every single day is important. And of course, connecting with others, right? So things are really difficult right now. However, it's not impossible. So with technology, with all sorts of creative ways that we can reach out, we can make it possible. And of course, just a simple breath. So if you feel heightened or intense, or an intense moment comes up, just a short, take a breather in and out. It's something that can help you return to that moment with a sense of ease and calm and a more rational mind to see what's the next best step to take in the situation. And so this is also another take-home activity that can be done beyond this class, this workshop. This is what's called the self-care wheel. And in it are the different elements of how we can take care of ourselves physically, our mind, our body, spirit, emotionally, professionally, and personally, right? And it's important that we maintain a balance among all these different factors, not just one. It's like having a toolbox. You want to make sure you have a complete set of tools so that you can handle every situation that can possibly come up, right? And as you're creating the self-care plan, it's also really important to examine what are the barriers to maintaining this self-care strategies, right? What are these barriers and how are you going to take action to address it? Is there someone in your life who you can make a self-care plan with and be kind of like accountability buddies, right? And part of that assessment on how am I taking care of myself is also being real and seeing, are there any negative coping strategies that I'm using or I would not like to use at all? And then in place of those negative coping strategies, what is something that you can do instead? Another thing that's come up too that will be helpful, right, is to do a check-in on communication. So a lot of people are experiencing cabin fever. It's normal to have conflict, but it's important that when there is conflict in a relationship or a household, that it is handled in a healthy way and that it is conflict transformation, right? So part of that is checking in with each other and yourself on what is your communication style, right? So some people are more passive, they are aggressive or passive aggressive, right? And then there are those who are really assertive. And assertive is different from aggressive in that in being assertive, you're able to communicate your needs and wants in a way that's not dominating, but at the same time, it's clear, right? So these are just some questions for self-reflection and assessment. How does your communication style affect your mood? How does it affect your relationships with others? What situations prevent you from expressing your needs? And what would help you improve your ability to express what you need? And then another thing that's important too is that even though we are enough to handle this situation, we also need to be able to identify support and resources around us. So practical support can be things like our people and things in your community, such as who can you ask to drive you somewhere, who can help you with chores and daily tasks, right? Advice or information. Who will you ask when you don't feel well or if you don't understand how to do something? Companionship is just somebody who can keep you company, right? Who will take a walk with you, who will spend some quality time. And of course, emotional support. Who will you look to for encouragement, understanding, or help when you're feeling down? And the point is, as you sort of journal on this, that these boxes should all be filled with somebody, 2 or 3 people, resources. It can be family, friends, clergy. It can be mental health professionals. That's definitely okay too. But the point is that you have someone to go to. And then this is just, when is it that, we should seek help? It can be something as simple as you just need someone to talk to, you need to develop new coping skills, you feel overwhelmed, or you notice that your pre-existing conditions are getting worse, or it's getting even more difficult to complete treatment. So this is something that if we were to do in a in-person workshop, we would have a discussion on what exactly are the barriers to seeking and receiving help, mental health care and or mental health services. And if you are tuning in on YouTube, feel free to comment it in the chat. And this is actually going to be very useful information, not just for me as a community mental health promoter doing outreach, but also for those who want to know what exactly is the situation in our community? Why is it difficult for us to seek help? And those barriers might be related to any one of these things, such as cultural stigma or the belief that we can just do this all on our own. It can include this fear of letting our family down, shame and embarrassment, the misconception that it's a sign of weakness, or the notion that we can't afford the time, it's not confidential, not knowing the process. I know for a lot of people, coverage can also be an issue too. So for example, in their healthcare plan, they qualify for not enough assistance, and then that can be something that deters them, especially if the provider they want from their cultural background is not available. Great. And so I'm going to show this video. It's a really short clip. If you know who Brene Brown is, she does amazing work, and she has amazing talks on wellness and mental health.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so continuing on a little bit, right? How do we show empathy and apply it to our situation, right? So the first step, how to help, know the common signs of mental disorders, express your concern in an empathetic way. So it can be something like, lately I've noticed that you've been sleeping late and waking up a lot later and missing class, right? And then the third step, listen non-judgmentally, be supportive and positive. Continue, and then fourth, encourage the person to get support from people they trust or talk to a healthcare provider, right? Encourage them to follow their treatment plan if they are on one or they would like support in starting one, right? It can be a very vulnerable time for them, and they need all the love and support to make it okay to get the help that they need in whatever form that takes, right? And of course, in the event of an emergency, if they talk about suicide, it's important to contact a healthcare provider and immediately call 911 right away, right? Those are emergencies that need to be handled in a very timely manner. So these are some of the resources. Lots and lots of URLs. But like I mentioned, they can, if somebody is in crisis or is facing an emergency, it's important to either call 911 or you can call together with them the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or they can also text. Another resource, if you are coming in from Riverside County, like myself, is to access the various helplines, right? There's a 24-hour crisis line, a CARES line, and also a substance use and referral support line. The teen line is specific to our teenagers, right? So they can talk to a peer, a teen who has been trained and experienced in what to do and how to respond. And of course, there are such things as 24/7 mental health urgent care centers, no appointment needed. They do crisis intervention. And in Riverside County, they are located in Riverside, Paris, and Palm Springs. I encourage you all from SoCal to know where these are closest to you, so that in the event there is an emergency for you or your loved one, you at least know where you can access those services. So thank you. That concludes my PowerPoint and my brief presentation. I believe we're going to go into a Q&A.
Hi, Nicole. I'm back. So I was just reading our SoCal Pinoy's YouTube channel live chat, and I do have one question for you. So how can we Filipinos open up? Because in Filipino culture there is that stigma, that we all have with opening up to our elders, opening up out about our problems, and asking for help in general.
Hello. Wow.
Hi.
Thank you for that question. Yeah. I'm also still trying to figure out that as well. But in my experience, it really depends on who you're talking to and what background they come from. So, for example, if you're talking with Filipino youth, it's helpful if they have a peer who can help them open up and help them feel comfortable to either seek services or find the courage to have a conversation with the family, right? And then kind of have somebody who can, if the conversation doesn't go so well, that they can go to like debrief or for support afterwards. It's definitely something difficult for a lot of frontliners in our community because of this image that as a bayani, as somebody who's a hero during this time, it's difficult to show weakness. So kind of an approach would be like part of being resilient is being vulnerable and modeling how to handle that vulnerability with grace and humility. And then with a lot of older Filipinos, I've noticed, or those who are just really faith-based and religious, our clergy are really pivotal and important in providing a safe space for them to talk about what they're feeling, what emotions are coming up, and then to make that linkage to services to overcome the stigma. Like it would be different if I said, hey, it's okay to go to counseling versus someone else from the community saying that, right? I feel like a lot of celebrities are also helping open up conversations as well. Another dynamic would be gender-wise too. So I notice a lot of men in our community have a lot of difficulty communicating and expressing their needs or being observant of their needs or how it's affecting those around them. So we need to pay special attention and be really intentional in the ways that we help them open up. Right? I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do have another question. Um, how can you approach someone who does not recognize they need help?
Yeah, so that's a very common thing where they'll think, oh, I don't need help for various reasons. And, that's totally okay. It's okay for them to say, I don't need help. But it's also okay to continue to check in with them in a gentle way so that the communication doesn't cut off, right? That's one of the last things we want is to shut the door or for them to shut the door on that venue, that platform, that relationship, especially if you're close to them. There's all sorts of different ways to help maintain that line of communication and engagement in the hopes that eventually they'll be able to get the services they need. So if they're not ready at that time, that's okay. Just, be an open door.
I have another question. How can we as Filipinos move the needle with mental health?
Okay, there's a lot of ways you can do that from the grassroots level, right? Attending this workshop is one way. You can do it within your family. If you're a parent, you can model these different things, different ways to healthily handle emotional circumstances, right? We can do it at a community level where we're advocating, pushing for policy. In the field of mental health, it would be a great help if we had more mental health professionals from a Filipino background, right? More of our kababayan who speak Tagalog or Ilocano, Bisaya, whatever, who understand our cultural background, so that when they do have clients or when we do get referrals, that we have someone to send them to so that they understand the cultural stigma. Yeah, and then even not just here, but back home in the Philippines, there is a lot of work to be done to strengthen the field of mental health.
Okay, let me ask if they have other questions. Um, and while we're waiting for some more questions, where can our viewers find you and your program? And how can they join your program, especially those viewers who live in the Riverside County area?
Sure. So for that, I'm going to share my screen again because I have some slides with flyers and all sorts of good information. I also forgot to mention this earlier, but so after hearing my presentation, if you fill out both of these surveys, anyone who fills out both of these surveys with this information that it's the region for Mid-County and I'm the presenter, y'all get a $5 Starbucks gift card. So go for it. And not only that, but these surveys and evaluations also serve as a platform for advocacy for more support and investment into programs like these in Riverside County.
Okay, oh, can you go back to that one? I'm copying it in the YouTube live chat so that our viewers can go ahead and fill out that form. Okay, hang on. Okay, got it.
Awesome, thank you. So if you're in Riverside County, these are the various mental health resources particular to the API community. APCTC is part of what's called SSG, Special Service for Groups. We have a counseling center in Moreno Valley that does services for not just youth 3 to 20 years old in Mandarin, English, and Spanish, but also for adults 21 and over if you're Asian Pacific Islander. We accept IEHP Medi-Cal, but if you don't have that, we can either help you qualify or find the most fitting counseling services for you, right? And then the Phil Mental Health Resource Center, they're more outreach, education, and workshops and volunteer opportunities. Please follow the Kapwa Youth IE Instagram for updates on our youth project. So through this program, high school and young adults, I'm a working mommy. They learn community skills, strengthen a community aspect, do a project that overcomes mental health stigma. This is also our kite parenting program. So we take a whole family approach to overcoming mental health stigma and helping folks feel comfortable. And then this is coming up on November 2nd, Undas, or Filipino All Souls, All Saints Day. We will be doing this via Zoom. And everyone is welcome. We will be doing a little bit of discussion. What is the origins of this tradition? How is it celebrated in the diaspora? Then we will also do a community altar, create it with the participants, do a prayer reflection, talk a little bit about healthy ways of grieving, and then do a film screening of Coco. This is Monday, 5:30 to 7:30.
And we got another question. So just really quickly, What are the risk factors that can make it worse or bring out the worst in their mental health problems?
Right, that's a really good question. Risk factors you can break it down into like a biopsychosocial model. So risk factors can include if there's a family history. So perhaps there's intergenerational trauma that's been passed down, or there's brain chemistry that's a little bit different. Psychologically, right? We talk about different personalities. Maybe they're a little bit more sensitive or more empathetic than others, right? So they may take a little bit more time to recover from difficult experiences. And then third, I mentioned the social environment, right? So are they living in a resource poor area where their basic needs are difficult to meet? Are they in an area where they feel isolated, right? So I hope that answers the question in a nutshell.
Yes, and I do have one very last question from our viewers. What are the symptoms or behaviors that one might see if we think someone needs help with a professional psychologist or MD?
Okay, right. So professional help is something that can be seen as you can access it when you notice that you're having those very severe symptoms, but it can also be something that you can access as part of prevention as well before it gets to that severe stage. So, right, if just like with any physical illness, there are mild symptoms where maybe you're feeling really down after an intense activity or life event, like someone just died and you feel you just need someone to talk to. It's okay to seek counseling or brief therapy for that. On the other end of the spectrum, for example, if you are going through something severe like postpartum psychosis, right, or very severe depression, where your lifestyle is very severely affected, you're having difficulty maintaining healthy relationships or responding well, then or right, you're having suicidal ideation where you're thinking of everything is just hopeless. Those are just some of the different scenarios that it's also very important to seek mental health services, psychiatric treatment, things like that. And if they're not ready, like we had a question earlier where, oh, what if they're not admitting that there's an issue or a problem? Well, you can also take a step to just explore what is it like to talk to a crisis hotline or talk to somebody who's worked in different situations where they've had people in crisis. And then that's totally okay too, just to learn. It's okay to learn, and there are no side effects really, right? Okay. Any more questions?
No, those are all of the questions. Yeah, so I'm back. Hi guys. So Nicole, if you can come back to the screen, that will be great. Thank you very much for joining us here at SoCal Pinoy's virtual class. This is one topic that not a lot of people talk about, especially in our Filipino community. And it's great that we have this platform so that we can talk about mental health. And it's also great to know that we have resources like, your program at the Riverside County. And do you have anything else that you want to tell our viewers? We're kind of over our time, but like, it's awesome. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think there's is there a karaoke? A Pinoy?
Yeah. There is a karaoke. Thank you for the segue. That's like one of my reminders. So after this class at 8:30, there's a karaoke session. We're gonna have our virtual Halloween costume contest. So even if we're in a pandemic or a lockdown, doesn't mean we can't celebrate in costume, right? So 8:30. Don't forget, if you want to join, show up in the Zoom karaoke Zoom session from 8:30 to 9:30 in costume. And if you don't want to sing, you don't have to sing. You just have to show up in costume. And we will post pictures of the contestants in our group page so that our members can all vote on their favorite. And there's going to be one winner for this contest. And the Hi-Fi Hedgehog gift shop, which is my gift shop, will be sponsoring a gift box. And for those who didn't win, there's going to be a special gift for each one of the contestants, also from the Hi-Fi Hedgehog gift shop. So yeah, don't forget, in like almost like 45 minutes, our karaoke session starts. So we'll see you guys then, and have a great rest of the night and the weekend as well. And don't forget, we're going to be announcing the winner of that virtual Halloween costume contest tomorrow in our SoCal Pinoy's Facebook group page. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you for being such a great presenter and for allowing us to feature you and your program in our show. Thank you so much, and see you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.